All right, so we're going to do the Lego assembly. This is one of the labs that we need our Lego bricks for. So this is why we made our part families of the Lego bricks, so we can then take our pieces that we made, the bricks that we made in our part families, and assemble them together to create something. You might have to go back into your Lego brick and create other parts in your part family. But that's just going back to your Lego brick, opening up part families, creating more bricks, and it's as easy as that. So these are just some examples of what other people have done. And then here, a note that there is a 0.2 millimeter gap between the individual bricks. So when you assemble them together, we're going to assemble them lining the pegs up. And you can see we have a 0.2 millimeter gap between there. That's because from here, this peg to this edge is 3.9 millimeters instead of 4. And that's so we have that gap there. It's some clearance between our bricks. We need to keep that in mind when we are assembling our bricks together. But we're going to head over to NX, and I'm going to show you a couple of things to maybe make the process a little bit easier, and a couple of assembly kind of tips. So we can open up NX. Want to make sure that we are in the advanced role. We can go to new. We're going to do an assembly. We want to be in millimeters because that's what our model is in. We're going to name this Lab 7, and then your UUID. And then you want to be sure that you're saving this in the same location as your part family pieces for the Lego brick are at. So they all need to be in the same file location. So maybe put them in the same folder, wherever they're at. If they're all on the desktop, make sure you put this on the desktop as well. So we'll hit OK, and we will go to assemblies. First thing we're going to do is add a component. Open up the file location, and if you saved it to where all of your part family bricks are, then you'll have access to all of those bricks. I made a couple of larger area ones. So I've got a 20 by 20, and this is only 4.8 millimeters tall. So this is a half height, and then a 20 by 20 brick. I want to constrain this. I'm going to put a fixed constraint on here, and I'll hit OK. You can see that I have these bisector planes on here. That's because the entire part got brought in. All I want is the model. So I'm going to go to the assembly navigator. I'll right click on that brick and replace reference set. I just want the model. So that's just going to bring in the solid body. And now we can start to assemble whatever Lego bricks that we want. I'm going to go to add component, open this back up. And what I want to start off with is I'm going to do one of the 2 by 3 bricks. And I'll bring that up, and I just want to place it about right there. Same thing with this brick. I want to make sure that it's just the model. And I'm going to position this on the larger brick here. So I'm going to go to assembly constraints. I want a center or infer center axis. And I want to select, I want the pegs here to line up. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to choose the face of one peg and the face of the other peg that I want to line up. And now that's going to be on the same axis, but they can still rotate and it can still move up and down. So I need to align another peg. So I'm going to do the one that's diagonal to it. And I will choose the corresponding peg down here. Now it cannot rotate. It has 2 points, has two axes that are constraining it. The other thing I need to do is I need to add a third. So now I can only move up and down. Only move up and down. So I'm going to do a touch constraint, and I want that surface and the bottom of this brick. Now this part is constrained. And that can seem like a lot to do for a bunch of bricks. And I'm going to show you a shortcut of what you can do instead of laying down a whole bunch of bricks. So let's say I wanted to add more continuous bricks here. Rather than coming up to add component and then adding another component, we can do pattern component. Pattern component is very similar to pattern feature, but instead of taking a feature and copying that feature in a certain pattern, we're going to be copying a component. And so the layout is pretty much the same. We have linear, circular, we can do reference. First thing we need to do is select the component that we want to pattern. We'll choose this. And essentially what I want is there to be a wall right here. So I'm going to continue on with this brick. So I'm going to specify a vector. I want it going in this direction. Count and pitch is fine. The count is going to change. I don't know exactly how many. We'll keep 2 in for right now. Pitch distance. Instead of putting an actual number, I'm going to go to measure. And I want to measure from one peg. So this is the beginning. This is the beginning peg to this brick. The next brick is going to start on this peg. So I want the distance from this peg to this peg. I can come over here and select this peg and this peg so that they're on the same plane. But if we wanted to, we could come up to point, select that point, and then this is the peg that's where the next brick is going to start. You can choose that, and you see how the distance is at an angle, so we're not getting the true value. We're getting this weird 25.84 millimeters, and it's because we're at this angle. We can fix that by coming over here to vector and choosing the vector that we want it to go across. So we can choose this x-axis vector. And now it's going to be on this plane and find us this parallel distance right here. So we're at 24 millimeters. That looks right. So I'll hit OK. And now we have copied over that brick, and we can start to figure out how many we need. So instead of 2, I'll go 4. It's just going to keep on copying that brick. And I'm going to do 6. And that's what I want for this row here. And then I also want this entire row to go all the way across to the other side. And we can use the second direction for that. So I can choose direction 2. Specify vector. I want to go that way. And it's got our count and our pitch distance. The way that we got that, again, we went to measure. Chose a point. And so instead of doing the pegs on top, I'm going to do the pegs down here. Same principle though. So this is where, going in this direction, this is where the first peg location is at. So I'll choose that point. And then the next brick is going to start here. Now I realize that it's actually this peg and this peg, but the distance here is the same, and that's all we're looking for. So we can hit OK. And then we can change the count that we want. We just wanted 5. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what I want for this is 9. Now, don't exactly copy what I'm doing. I'm just showing you some things to help out with what you want to do. So you can see some of those examples that we saw on Canvas. People typically have fun with this and make something pretty unique that they find interesting. So there's some requirements that are on Canvas. So as long as you're within those requirements and you're accomplishing all those, you can have fun with this one. We're going to keep on adding to this. Now let's say I needed another one of this 2x3 brick. Instead of going back up to add component and finding it in the file, what I can do is I can just click on this brick and hit add component. And it's going to automatically add another one of the 2x3 bricks. We can add different counts if we need to. What I want right now though is a 2x4 brick. So I'm going to go into add component. And I will select open and go to the 2x4. You can constrain this in that window. I like to go ahead and just add the part. This one also needs to go and just be the model. You can add the part and constrain it in that same window. I like to add it and then come back into the assembly constraints and then constrain my part. It's just how I like to do it. So just like how these bricks were 2 in on both sides, that's what I want to do here. So I'm going to add an assembly constraint. I'm going to go from this. I want the center axis. I'll go from this peg to this peg. And then I need to do the diagonal one as well. So we'll go 4 in and 1 up. And we need another touch. We'll go from the top of that brick to the bottom of this brick. And we'll hit OK. And I want to copy this brick into a line. We're not going to do the array like we did down here. Instead, we'll just do one line. So we're going to go up to the pattern component. We're going to use one direction this time. I'm going to choose this component. My vector will be going this way. And we're going to do the same technique or pitch distance. I want to go to measure. This is the starting peg for this brick. And then we're going to go over, so it's going to be 4. And then the next brick is going to start at this peg. So I want to choose the center for this peg. So we've got, I chose this starting one. We got 2, 3, 4 pegs. So that's the end of the first block. The second block is going to start on this peg. So I want the starting distance to the starting distance. 32 millimeters, hit OK. And it doesn't look like I need 6. Looks like I just need 4. And I'll hit apply. Now what I want is, I don't want the array like I have here, but I want these 4 bricks to be copied over to this side. And you might think that we could come up here to mirror assembly and select these components and then just mirror it across a plane. But that's not what mirror assembly is talking about. Mirror assembly is more along the lines of how we created the left side of the mini bike frame. When we made the right side, it's going to create another part, which is not what we're looking for here. So it's not what we're going to do. We're going to go back to pattern component. We're going to choose our blocks here. You can select the actual components themselves, or you can come over to the assembly navigator and select the components that way. You can also angle your screen down and click and drag and select the components this way. So we have all 4 of them selected, and I want to essentially copy the 4 over to the other side. So my vector is going to be going this way. I don't need 4, I just want 2. And I'm going to go to the measure for my pitch. And I want the distance from this peg. So this is the starting point for this brick all the way over here. So the starting point for this brick is going to be here. That's the distance that I want. I'll hit OK. And so now I have copied over these 4 bricks to the other side. I'll hit OK. And then I want to add another brick here that's going to go across this side. So I did both of those in one pattern component. And then I'm going to add one more of this half height, but the large bricks. Add component. I've got a 14 by 14 by 4.8 here. That's what I want. And I want this to just be on top of the bricks that we just made. So go to assembly constraints. Do line center axis here to this brick, or this peg. And then this peg to this peg. And then do another touch. Here to there. And we'll hit OK. So there's a couple things that we need to do outside of just assembling Lego bricks together. We want to change the color of these bricks to create some design with our bricks. This is probably something that this should be planned out beforehand as to like what you're doing. The way that we do that is we go to View, Edit Object Display, and we can select our object. Same way that we were doing it whenever we did the pattern component. So we can select multiple of them in the assembly navigator. We can also select them by clicking and dragging. Be careful with this though, because sometimes you can accidentally select just a face. So what we want to do, or something that could help, is making sure that you have got component selected in your filters, and then you can, it'll be easier just to select the components. So I'm going to start off with the bottom section here. I'll hit OK. And I just want to turn this into a blue. I'll hit apply. And then I can go to select new objects. I want the array on that next level. I want this to be a lighter blue. And we can even turn the transparency up a little bit if we want to. You know, have sort of like a see-through brick here. And I'll do the next two progressively lighter blues. And we can still like we talked about before, we're talking about bringing in previously assembled assemblies as sub-assemblies. So we don't just have to bring in new components, we can bring in assemblies. So I can go back to assemblies, add component, and I can select an assembly that's already a thing. And we can assemble that the same way that we have before. Go to the constraint. I'm still going to do the infer center axis, but so we can't access these pegs for this bottom piece. So I'm going to look underneath, and we have these embossed circles here. And if you remember, we actually lined these up with the top peg. So we can reference these to line up with the top pegs on here. Do the same thing on this one. And then we can do another touch. And it's fully constrained. And real quickly, I'm going to add colors to the rest of this. And when everything looks the way that we want to hide these assembly constraints. And we can do that going to move to layer, filter to find only our assembly constraints, select all those, move that to a layer, and move that to the datums layer, and then hide that layer. And we also want to hide our WCS here. And we can do that by going to Tools, More, and then uncheck Display WCS. And we want to take a screenshot of this, so we want to make sure that our vertical lines look vertical and make sure that we can see what's going on. So just take a screenshot of that and make sure you turn it into the Dropbox on Canvas.